Hello and welcome to another Advanced Skeleton video. In this video we're going to take a closer look at the new Picker tool. Now the Picker tool is a tool for selecting and controlling the various animation controls, very much like the old Selector tool. Now these two tools are very similar and they provide all the same drop-down menus and functions. However, the Picker tool is provided as an alternative to the Selector, as it provides some subtle differences in the way the interface behaves. Now the things you can do with the new Picker tool that the old Selector tool does not support is you can scale up the entire interface to any size, and you can also zoom in and pan around within the interface. And in this tool, you can also click drag to select an area that selects multiple controls in one click. And in addition to that, you can have multiple pickers laid out in various tabs. So that covers the differences between the Selector and the Picker. So let's go ahead and now focus on the Picker and look through all the menus and the buttons and how it works. First thing we're going to do is bring in a character. And we're going to do that by referencing. So create reference. We're going to pick Tuna, the example character that comes with Advanced Skeleton. And make sure we're using namespace, and we'll make sure to use the namespace from the file name. So let's go ahead and open up the Picker interface, and you'll notice that when you first open the Picker interface, it comes in with two empty tabs. And none of them have any buttons yet, as each tab has to be loaded. So let's go ahead and load both the button and the face tab. And we can scale up the interface. Now by default, just selecting these objects in the interface does not automatically select the corresponding animation controls. To get this to happen, you have to turn on the selection checkbox. Once the checkbox is on, the selection you make in the buttons here get translated to the actual animation controls. So, as we started with the selection checkbox, let's take a look at the other checkboxes here, and the next one is keyed. What that one does is, if you are to have keys on any of your animation controllers, the corresponding button turns red. As we can see here, we now get a red outline around the wrist button because we applied keys to the wrist animation control. The extra checkbox changes the correlation between the controller and the button to apply to the extra controls. The extra controls are the controllers you get to by selecting any of the curve controls and pick up key on the keyboard. Now there's an additional animation control right there that are useful for offset animations, applying constraints, etc. Now by hitting the extra checkbox in the Picker tool, selecting any of the controllers here automatically then selects the extra control as opposed to just the standard controller. Now the other things you'll find next to these checkboxes is the drop-down menu. This is a character drop-down list. It will pick up every character that it finds in the scene, as long as you bring in the characters via referencing and make sure to use namespace. The set button allows you to pick a character and hit set instead of using the drop-down list to select the character. Now let's have a look at the drop-down menus. We'll start from left to right. Refresh refers to this drop-down menu. If you are to add additional characters in your scene, you can hit refresh and it will update the list of available characters. Filter allows you to filter out what appears in this list. Now the filter applies not only to the name of the character, but the path for the referencing. So if you have multiple assets referenced in, which could be a series of character props and sets, and you only wanted to show the characters, and characters or lived in a character folder, then you could simply put asterisk characters, asterisk, hit enter, and it would filter to only show characters. In the display menu we have controls. Toggling this is toggling on and off the controls for the selected character. Set hotkey allows you to set a hotkey for the previously mentioned control visibility toggle. By default it will go to the tilde hotkey, but you can use the hotkey editor to reassign it to any key. But as I assign it now, all I have to do is click the tilde key to hide the controllers. Now this works in such a way that as long as I'm holding down the tilde key, the controllers are hidden, and as soon as I let go, they come back. Now what we can also do is hold down the control key and click tilde, and that gives us a permanent toggle of the controllers, not just while you're holding down the hotkey. Now this can be a useful setup for when you work in animation, so you're constantly working without seeing an animation control. Just at the instant that you want to select the control, you click the tilde, make your selection. As soon as you let go of the tilde, control is hidden again. Now this way you can work with a very cleanly looking scene. It's only while you hold down the tilde and make your selection that the controls are visible. And we'll continue going through the menus. Next is joints. Now this toggles the visibility of the joints. Now normally you don't need to see the joints when you're working with animation. Gimbal lock is a tool that lets you see little gimbal lock visualization icons. Now this is covered in details in the gimbal lock tutorial video, and I recommend seeing that for further explanation. Next drop down menu is the pose. In here we can copy and paste pose. And on the bottom of the pose menu is the mirror pose. And mirror. Now the mirror function has several options, such as left to right or right to left, or you can do a complete swap, which does that. Also you can work on various axes and in various spaces. Then we have the animation menu. Now this allows you to copy and paste animation. Clean is a way to remove static channels. Now this is very much similar to the function that you find in Maya by edit delete static channels. Next we have bake. Now there are several different types of bakes in here. Now you can bake all the animation controls onto a baked skeleton. You can bake motion captures. You can bake the extra controllers onto the main controls. Or you can even bake all FK to IK or vice versa for all the FK and IK systems. Next we have switch FK-IK and switch pivot. Now the switch FK-IK will take a system that has FK and IK, such as the arm here, and hit switch FK-IK. Now this works in any given pose, so we can change the pose, and if we hit switch FK-IK, it is preserving the pose as it's switched over to the other system. Now for the switch pivot, the way that works is you can provide an alternative pivot to a controller. So for example, if we want to be able to rotate this wrist, but we want to rotate around a completely different pivot point, then what we can do is first go ahead, create a locator. We'll put the locator where we want the pivot point to be. Say we might want it right there. With the locator and the controller selected, just hit switch pivot. What happens now is that the extra controller has moved to this location. So the wrist main controller itself is still here, but if you pick walk up key on the keyboard, the extra control pivot point is now down here. Moving on, the next we have dynamics. Now this allows you to add dynamics to any of the controllers. So for a quick demonstration, let's select all the controllers in the arm and say add to selected. Now to see that for the wrist controller here, we got now a couple of extra attributes that lets us control the dynamics. Now to see this in action, we can use the interactive playback. Just give ourselves plenty of frames to work with. And hit interactive playback. Now if we move the root controller, you'll see that we're getting these dynamic fluid motions on the arm. Now we could have some fun with this and just apply a bit of dynamics to the head as well. And the other arm. Now back to default pose. Next for dynamics, we have remove from selected, which just removes the edit dynamics. We have set initial states that lets us set a starting point for any dynamic system. And at the bottom we have some functions for baking the dynamics onto the animation controller, and unbake, which will remove the keys and take you back to interactive dynamics. Now the last item here is parenting. Now this allows you to parent objects onto the rig, or parent parts of rig onto other objects, but it also allows for parenting within the rig itself, which to some of you might be known as space switching. So there might be situations where you want controllers to follow other controllers. So for example, if you wanted the head control to also affect the arm control, if the character were to hold his own head, Say you have a situation like this, and you wanted to move the head control, and you want the arm control to follow. Now what we'll do is select the IK control and the head control and hit parent. Now it's recommended to use the second option, extra control. That applies the constraint to the extra controller, leaving the controller itself free to be animated. And we'll see that if we now move the head, the IK control is following. I'll get back to default pose. Now that's it for all the menus and the buttons. Now, last thing we'll look at is that these two tabs corresponds to actual Maya files. If we were to look in the Advanced Skeleton installation folder, you can navigate into the picker folder and you'll see something called picker files. Inside picker files, you'll have scenes and you'll see there's a biped and face Maya file, and that corresponds to the biped and face tabs in the picker interface. And this is how we can manage and create our own tabs. So if you want to make your own tab, you can just first open one of these existing tabs by going Open Scene and go to Advanced Skeleton installation folder. And we'll open the biped file. And we'll see that this is in fact the selector interface. And what you can do in here, you can make any changes that you want to this file. And you only need to follow one simple rule, and that is that the name of the object you create should match exactly with the name of the controller that you want the button to select. And this way you can make your own buttons with the freedom of any shape and color that you like. And to make that a new tab, all you gotta do is save it out as a new file with a new name, and it will automatically appear in here as a new tab. Now that's it for this time. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.